So what we got is we got these like neighborhoods, right? One neighborhood over here, one neighborhood over there, and they're like, you know, a good fucking 4 miles from each other. And then in the middle, you got a swath of like farmland or just emptiness or just a couple houses. And then you got all the pipes and the infrastructure running underground between these neighborhoods that are so far apart from one another. And I think we got to smarten up. We got to make our cities tighter. And I'm all for mixed zoning. So I love the idea that I can like open up my
right.
Yeah, mixed use, man. And a lot of people are against it because they think that, you know, a neighborhood should look like, you know, the old-fashioned North American neighborhoods where it's all houses.
It gets into NIMBYism really heavy.
Yeah, I don't really like those designs because, you know, when I was in Tokyo, dude, this is the coolest thing. That city is right smack dab. Look at it. Imagine a dartboard. Right smack dab in the middle of that dartboard, that's the king's house, and there's a ring around it. And that's this massive train system. So you get on the train, and every station that you get off, now this is an insane city, right? Every station along this ring, or dartboard ring, is like 1 million people every station. It's like 36 of these stations. You get off, and you get off the train, you take the elevator up, you go up a couple floors or down a couple floors, that's the shopping center. And then you go up 10 floors, and then that's the fucking massive apartment buildings. So people, right, you wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, get your coffee, you go down the fucking elevator, and you pick up a couple things, like a fucking lunchbox from the supermarket that's like directly below you, and you get on the train, right, all down the same elevator. So we really gotta like, I think Brooklyn's a good example of good design. Like you can walk out of your place, pick up your smokes and an apple from a vendor. You know, you got to have the walkability thing. But this whole North American massive, wide housing thing, I don't think it's good because we had a fucking breakdown in Calgary. Actually, I think it was San Francisco San Diego sent us a water pipe. One of our major water pipes busted underground. First, they had to find out where it is underground under this massively wide city. They had to dig it up, and it's just goes to prove. And then fucking 25 or 30% of all the city's water here in Calgary, it's so wide, it just leaks. It leaks off into the soil surrounding the pipes. So it's so inefficient, right? So we got a whole bunch of things to figure out, I think. But we got the technology now. Yeah, we're gonna figure out how to make these cities more walkable, like New York or Brooklyn, or even the smaller cities should be like that. Like,
well, the cities are immediately walk. Maybe hold on 2 seconds, Jack. Maybe Austin is more walkable because it's a planned grid, and the Riverwalk in San Antonio is walkable. But you have to have a car or a truck to get to most places in Texas because it's so big. And I did, Jack, if you don't mind, well, actually, let's go to you first, and then we do have the benefit of an Eastern perspective here. And so, Tiger, I know farming and agriculture are not necessarily your forte, but maybe somebody in your family, a cousin, an uncle, is a farmer or something, and I'm kind of curious how y'all do it down in China, if you don't mind. But, Jack, go ahead first, please. We'll go Jack and then Tiger.
Midtown Manhattan office building today, 97.5% discount. So I think the whole idea of the cities, I mean, it's an old invention, but I mean, it was about getting bodies, you know, when the steam engine was invented, well, I guess it was a lot before that, but for commerce, but when the steam engine was invented, you know, people moved their bodies from the farm close to the engines, and then just to be at work, and then office, you know, workers were there. But I don't know if y'all have seen the old prediction by Arthur C. Clarke about the future of cities in the year 2000, and he showed these giant cities, and then he said, but actually there'll be no cities in the year 2000 because we'll use telecommunications to talk to each other. And it never happened. So we still got cities because I guess people wanted to work together even though they didn't have to. But COVID, I don't think it's going to end it, but it's like I don't work. My life permanently from where I work, and I'm totally remote. But and we were on the edge of remote. But I'm not saying everybody's going to be remote. But it maybe 30%, 40%. But it's just like that tower sold. You know, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's not. I don't think we're going to full steam keep growing cities like we have been. I mean, San Francisco is shrinking faster than Detroit.
So I think we have a really, really interesting historical juxtaposition here. America as a country is only about 246 or 7 years old. I can't do simple math. I was always horrid at it, and that includes in my head. We have Tiger here, who's from China. It's got cities like Chengdu, which have been around for, God, 4,500 years as part of the capital of the Eastern and Western Zhou dynasty in the 3000s BC, if I remember my history correctly. And these sorts of cities have always grown in that region of the world. Tiger, what can you tell us about the growth of cities? Granted that y'all in your country have some of the oldest ones.
Well, I just want to say the situation in China and America, especially in land and agriculture, is not at all comparable because arable land in China is all state-owned, which means the government can decide how much farm labor they want to allocate to this land. And recently, actually, China has been trying to emulate the American way of farming, which is mechanized mass-scale farming, which will drive down the cost. And China could use its government policies to relocate farm labor population to urban centers or at least suburbs. And that's not a policy option that Americans have. So yeah, basically China is driving that change via policy.
So the next question is about cities. Jack seems to think in the American context, our cities are shrinking, maybe they're going to get smaller. From what you know of cities in your part of the world, do they ever go away? I mean, I know in history sometimes they collapse, change hands on who governs them. But
yeah, there are cities that have totally disappeared from the map. They were like population centers, mostly because of war. They disappear. But I think in modern history, it's again policy that China wants to urbanize. And that is coordinated government policies.
Thanks, Tiger. I really appreciate that. David, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
I also appreciate the support of Maduro.
Thank you.
No, Kyle, but we're not having that discussion.
Oh, okay.
We're getting his perspective being from a country that's about 5,000 years old. And so when they talk to their kids or grandparents talk to you, they tell you different stories. In my grandparents, for example, Kyle, whenever I asked my grandfather, quote unquote, tell me stories about the olden days, as I used to tell him, my mother's father was on the Burma Road with General Stilwell during World War II, supplying to Mao Zedong and the communist forces equipment, bullets, things of that nature into the way, into the push against the Imperial Japanese forces, which at that point were close to 1 million on the Chinese mainland. So I'm not trying to take issue with moral stances here, not because we can't, but because I don't find it productive.
Marshall, we can't be friends. That's great story and personal opinion.
Instead of being interrupted
No, that's not. Hold on 2 seconds. That's not it at all. If you're in a conversation where you have to talk to people, bringing up that kind of stuff doesn't help have a conversation. And the benefit of having somebody in the country.
An event that just happened recently, an election that was denied and supported by two different
Kyle, we're not having a
Kyle,
conversation. You only your big mouth. Can you stop for a second? And then I'll be brief. Okay?
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Just have some maybe anecdotal things to say. Obviously, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. The city hasn't been run well. The city itself hasn't grown population-wise past 500,000 for decades, but our suburbs have, where they're better run, where people
enjoy more peace in their life and more order. But if you look around the world at those communities that we call blue regions, Seattle really is a city of communities and neighborhoods, and we're supported that way in breaking up in smaller chunks, obviously, and good places to live that are run well in small areas, not the city as a whole. But what I wanted to say is look at the Mediterranean culture where people live longer. They have community, they have support. What COVID taught us is that